This is Daily Treasures with words of comfort, encouragement, and hope from the Word of God. Here is Dr. Nick Venditti with today's devotional.
April 17. The Lord cleanses from sin. Welcome to Daily Treasures from the Word of God. Today's reading is Psalms 51 through 55. Our lesson is from Psalm 51, verses 1 and 2. Be gracious to me, O God, according to your loving kindness. According to the greatness of your compassion, blot out my transgressions. Wash me thoroughly from my iniquity, and cleanse me from my sin. King David is identified as the writer of this psalm. The occasion of this psalm was Nathan the prophet's confrontation of the king because of his illicit affair with Bathsheba. The beginning of the psalm is a desperate plea from a heart that admits guilt and the need for forgiveness. Let's look at David's three petitions. First, King David needs grace from the Lord. True grace comes only from God. Grace is unmerited or undeserved favor. All humanity is separated from God because of Adam and Eve's choice. They were not to eat the fruit from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. They had a decision to make, and they chose to succumb to Satan's deception. This choice has affected all of humanity, for we are all born with a sinful nature. No one is righteous. We have all sinned. The only true God, the God of the Bible, is holy and righteous, who abhors sin and its consequences. Humanity is devastated due to the choice of our original parents. That is why God's grace is so necessary. The psalmist's confessions is so important to understand the offense. Transgression against God can be forgiven only by the initiation of His grace. Second, King David needs loving kindness from the Lord. The word translated as loving kindness, chesed, can also mean mercies, goodness, deeds of devotion, God's covenant-keeping, and faithfulness. In Exodus 15, Moses and the people sing a song about the Lord's delivering them from the hand of Egypt and slavery. Verse 13 uses loving kindness in the context of redemption. The Davidic promise in the fulfillment of the covenant demonstrates God's loving kindness, but the ultimate expression of redemption, salvation, and covenant is in the life and work of Jesus Christ. Last, King David needs to be cleansed from his sin. God's grace and loving kindness now make it possible for King David to be cleansed from his sin. What was his sin? He committed adultery and had Uriah, Bathsheba's husband, killed. How could David be a man after God's own heart? The answer is simple. He repented of his sin. As horrible as his sin was, David admitted his guilt and asked for the Lord's forgiveness. Later in the psalm, he asked the Lord to create a new heart in him and to restore him. In summary, King David needed God's grace, King David needed God's loving kindness, and King David needed to be cleansed from his sin. Let's turn to the Lord's grace in the day of trouble. His grace assuredly will sustain us. It has been a pleasure to share with you daily treasures from the Word of God. Tomorrow's Bible reading is Psalms 56 through 60. Let's not forget the words of the psalmist. The law of your mouth is better to me than thousands of gold and silver pieces. Until tomorrow, and may God bless you in abundance as you study the Word of God.